Well, so we have to also get the conversation running, and we note that the Justice Emil Short Commission will be sitting. They did some detour around the location where the whole incident happened and for the reason why they have been constituted by the president. And Kojo, it will be an interesting conversation because we have Joseph Akable, a man who always monitors the situational reports and what the proceedings are at the commission.
Absolutely. And Joseph, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Just before we get started, though, a quick bit of information, and this is great. It's Ghana Month. Of course, the Fantastic Four tours by Joy FM have come back. The first destination for our Fantastic Four tour this year is Afajato and Bli. Okay, we're doing them together, same day, in the Volta region. And it's this Saturday, by the way, the 9th of March. 250 Ghana cedis, that's all it's going to cost you to get on. That covers your transportation, site access, as well as food, water, and drinks. Okay. Now it's time to challenge yourself to accomplish these great conquests. If you want to register, please call 0544 336 512. And here's a photo of our massive poster for the Fantastic Four. Afajato Emily is where we're starting. So that should be on your screen, I hope, since we discussed it. But anyway, let's get back to our conversation about the commission. Indeed, and you've been paying very close attention to what's been happening. Friday, they went out and about. They got into the community. And tell us a little bit about, first of all, what is it that they wanted to see? What was in their mind? Did they discuss what it is that they came there to find?
You recall that, I mean, if you've monitored the proceedings of the commission, there have been times when, I recall when some judge testified, when he was talking about how he had to run from one place to the other. The commissioners asked him to more or less try and explain how the place looks like. And I recall there was one of the occasions that he was pointing at the TV that the commission uses and saying that, assuming that is the building and assuming that is the other side. So in the words of the executive secretary, he says they want to see things that 1,000 words cannot capture. So they want to make sense of the testimonies that they've heard so far. So they found it very necessary to go over to the place to see for themselves what has happened there. Mind you, there had also been talks about some bullet marks on various structures close by that the commission was trying to have a look at too. In fact, they had already sent some experts from the CID to go and assess it even before the commission went over. So with the assistance of the CID detectives and ballistics experts, they were taken to the place to assess for themselves and secondly try and make sense of the testimonies that they've heard. Because mind you, they've heard two stories so far. One suggesting that 6 warning shots were fired with other shots coming from within the house. Now, they were trying to understand where from the marks then. If warning shots were fired, should there be marks? Which direction were the shots coming from? Were they coming from the house, within the house, or from the other sides of the house? So all those were issues that we captured in a report that I subsequently filed for TV, where you have the ballistics experts explain the direction from which the shots were coming from.
There's always a period of trying to do the synchronization with what the testimony or the responses of the witnesses were, and also what was cited by the team. What mainly were the views of the commissioners and those other experts that accompanied them?
So in that report I will be showing in some few minutes' time, that report actually has first a video of the action on the said day. And if, assuming where I'm sitting is the man's residence, the parliamentary candidate's residence, opposite him is where you have some 3 trees. And on the right-hand side of the trees is where you have the bullet marks. So it's obviously meant, according to the ballistics expert, that the shots could not have been fired from within the house, but rather the shots came from this side. And if you watch that first video that starts the report, you realize that that was the direction from which the individuals who were running, apparently from the gunshots. So you hear multiple gunshots and you have people running. And that is where the gunshots are coming from. So that's, and again, the direct question that Ernest Kofi Abuchi asked the ballistics expert was whether when they assess the bullet marks, whether they can say that they were as a result of warning shots. And his response was that the bullet marks are lower than the height of a normal human being. He says what the officers are trained to do is that when firing warning shots, you should aim higher than the height of a normal human being. So because they are lower, he asked him that could he say that it was aimed. He says that seems more likely because of the height of that.
Why don't we have a look at this this report that Joseph A.W.W filed?
Shots were fired. Gunshots were fired. The source of the gunshots has been contentious as various witnesses have given conflicting testimonies.
Later, they also said they heard gunshots coming from within the compound of the house. Our boys then gave some 6 warning shots.
There were many, my lord.
Many?
If I'm not mistaken, they were holding them. I'm not mistaken, it will be over 20 per what I saw.
Okay. And were you able to find out the source of these empty shells? Who had, fired these gunshots? The empty shells that you saw, were you able to detect?
I inquired, but the information they gave me was that they were fired by the task force team that came there.
I saw them point directly into the crowd, in the direction of the crowd, and fire.
Ballistics expert with the police CID, Michael Kujo, told the commission that more than 19 gunshot marks seen on structures opposite the residence of the NDC parliamentary candidates were from the right side of the building, contrary to testimonies suggesting they were fired from within.
For the angle, I don't know for one shot, but mostly once it's targeted at this one, for one shot I think mostly it should be up. So once it's targeted at an object below the height of maybe a normal human being, then I don't see it as a warning shot.
And therefore you conclude that they were potentially aimed?
They were
even not aimed at a tree, but aimed somehow.
I may say so. I don't know, the gun was coming from this direction. The shots were coming from the left to my right.
He also told the commission the bullets could have caused injury to persons standing few meters away from the house.
So none of these bullets could create, unless maybe the person was ahead of the marks here.
But where was the blood found?
That was on this area.
2 other structures and a vehicle meters away from the residence of the parliamentary candidates were also identified as having gunshot marks. The commission has meanwhile decided it will only engage persons who were present in the constituency during the by-election.
The candidate who actually won, that is the MP, was not on the scene. She was not here. She never was here for the entire time. Everything she knows about this incident, she heard from someone. Therefore, she's only at best a secondary witness. And the commission therefore came to the conclusion that, frankly, apart from having won the election, there's nothing she's going to tell us, apart from speaking on the basis of things people have told her.
The commission will continue with its proceedings on Monday as it's expected to take testimony of a number of witnesses connected to this particular violence that they are trying to unravel the circumstances leading to it. Reporting for JoyNews from Ballistics, my name is Joseph A.W.W.
Well, so you've watched that, but what do you make of it? More so, what did the commissioners and those on the ground make of it? And Kwejo, it will be quite interesting trying to get the views of the victims, but more so the residents who would be witnesses, who saw it as well.
And I mean, I don't want to preempt the judgments of the commission, but if all of this evidence finds its way into their conclusions, it will be very interesting to see what they recommend for if the ballistics expert is to be believed, that these people were not firing warning shots, they were shooting at the crowd of unarmed Ghanaians. I am very curious to see what the conclusions of the commission will be.
There are also a number of gunshots that the commission must account for, if I'm to put it that way.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Indeed.
because we've had 6.
The gunshots that were witnessed?
The marks, we saw 19 marks actually.
Okay, it's the marks? The
marks, yes.
On what building?
They are on 3 trees, about 11 of them. Then there is a house directly opposite the residence of the parliamentary candidate, also on the wall. You have about 3 of them. Then there is another convenience store close by, also a metallic one, also has 2 of them. There's another white vehicle that had 1. Then there is a salon, a hairdressing salon that is some few meters away, most about 50 meters away from the residence of the parliamentary candidates. There was 1 there. And there's also another red vehicle that we were told about that had been moved away. They told us that more than 3 were on that vehicle. But the point the ballistics expert made was that the marks show that they were fired from a high velocity weapon. So he says it could be the case that there are still some other marks that, because it travels within 800 yards, he says, but it's effective 400 yards. So it could be that some have traveled and caused damage far that beyond what the experts, the analysts have been able to even identify to ascertain. So he said that is a possibility.
Meaning what? That as they were shot from the guns from which they were shot, they could have penetrated something before getting to the endpoint.
Yes, and they could have gone beyond that. They've not even identified.
There could be marks further
away from what they had seen.
Yes. Yeah. So let me ask this: all of these marks appear to be in one direction, right?
Yes, they are all in one direction. They are from the right-hand side of the residence of the parliamentary candidate, heading towards the left-hand side.
Towards the left.
Yeah.
Nothing from inside the house.
We didn't see. We went into the house. There were no bullet marks inside. In fact, when you get to the place, all the areas where you have the bullet marks, the experts, the investigators have already done the work. Right? So they were the ones who were actually leading the commission. So they were taking them to where the marks are.
On the park, did they find any bullet hole or casings?
No. They didn't find any bullet hole or casings.
Because according to the reports, there were shootings consistently also on the park before you round up the school building.
Yes, but mind you, there are a number of empty shells that have already been collected. In fact, the more than 20 that the police officer, the East Legon district commander was said in that report talking about, those ones were the ones that he said when he arrived on the park he saw people with. There were also some 2 that the crime officer also came to tell the commission that he met some school children also holding. So maybe those could fit into the unaccounted ones in terms of the shooting that we are told occurred on the park as well. But all those piece of evidence we are told is with the forensics department at the police service. They are not done with their analysis yet in terms of which weapons directly fired them, the specific weapons, among other things. So that report, we understand, once it's done, will be submitted to the commission.
So there was a concern that the police investigation in response to the complaint made by the NDC had stalled. But it appears that they have been working.
So this is actually following the incident, the IGP set up an investigative team that were supposed to investigate the crime scene and everything. So that is the work that they are doing. So that is that investigative team that is working on. And we understand from the East Legon district, what the various officers from the commander to the divisional commander for all told us was that once that team was set up, they had to abandon the investigation and hand over to them, even though some of the officers are part of the team and assisting them.
So this concern on the part of the minority that this commission's work will stop the police from doing theirs, clearly that is not what appears to be happening. The police are working and even feeding evidence
to the commission. But as to whether they are investigating it to the extent that the minority was looking out for, because they were directly looking out for people who have abused people and crimes, maybe the commission could still arrive at those same conclusions and find people guilty or responsible for the brutalities that were seen. And that is why we understand today a victim of the violence is to testify before the commission.
Initially, when we had at least 2 main ministers, we had Ambrose Derry and then also Mr. Kandapa, who is the Minister for National Security. They all kept referring, and I believe even the Minister of State for National Security, also they all kept saying that they will refer to the police or wait for the police to give them some sort of information. Do we know, what perhaps the observations are with the commission, whether the police indeed have gotten that information to those ministers, and onwardly, whether they fed to the commission as well?
In terms of the police investigations, what we picked up from the scene is that it's still an ongoing process, because as of now, they've not even been able to finish with just the gunshots that they've been able to collect.
You see, the situation is that these police officers or the structure of the police institution reports to these ministers.
Yes.
And so the normal procedure of reporting to a higher ministry or public official will always be there, even though the commission is investigating and doing its work.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, what we want to know is that sort of operational procedure ongoing, which maybe they have to report to the minister to give him the latest update? Because clearly, when Mr. Kandapa and then Ambrose Derry were at the commission, they kept referring, oh, we'll wait for the police to inform us to do this, to do that.
We don't know for certain whether that has actually been done, but in terms of the official communication, it appears the police still have a lot of work that they are doing on the matter. Just that it doesn't seem that the scope may sit in terms of what exactly the commission is doing. Because what people have expected the police to do is they want them to go ahead and establish who assaulted the citizens that we saw on the various tapes and the various reports, and who is being charged for that offense, and what happens. That is the ordinary function of the police. When there is an incident here, someone fires shots, someone beats up someone, they expect the police to go in, investigate, arrest someone, and process the person for court. And that is what, at least it doesn't appear, is something that is ongoing. The investigation appears to be limited to processing the crime scene and making information available for the commission.
Right. It's an important question that Roland asks about whether or not that reporting is happening. Obviously, I mean, the commission might not be aware of it.
Yes, and should not be aware because that's...
well, they did tell some of those ministers to bring back further particulars, didn't they? So yes, perhaps to that extent, they will be interested in whether that reporting continues. But you must ask yourself, if a minister, prior to appearing before a commission, didn't get these briefings, will they get it now, after they have, you know, completed their appearance? But anyway, let's look to the future. We know that... but
before you come in, I wanted to also ask, you know, since you were a journalist, reporter also on the ground, even though you had accompanied the commission and it was your line of work to make sure that you stay with the commission, did you try to look at the atmosphere in the community and speak to some others as an independent just report?
In fact, when I got to the place, it was actually my first time to the scene since the incident happened. I was not there during the election, so I had no clear-cut idea of where exactly everything happened. The residents in the neighborhood, it appears that the incident that happened on the day is still fresh in their minds. Immediately they saw us around. Someone just approached me and he asked me whether I was a journalist, and I said yes. He said, "Oh, I can show you around if you don't mind." And he was able to tell me everything that happened, where the polling stations were, where the house was, and everything. And when I asked them about the bit about the empty shells, in fact, the gentleman was actually telling me that there were some shells that he had also seen that he knows was with another gentleman. And I actually asked him that, I gave them a police contact to make sure that they make it available to the police, because those are the things that the police are trying to find. Mind you, they are supposed to receive a logbook from the National Security Secretariat that showed the ammunition that was handed, in terms of the quantity that was handed to the SWAT team. So whether indeed the -6 is actually accurate or not, because if that is accurate, it should be just 6 that have been expended, and whether questions will be asked.
Would it mean that if officially the commission, per what the main authorities, the police, IE, etc., being what had left their armory is 6, could it mean that maybe somebody may not be saying the right things, or maybe the logbooks may not also have been well recorded by way of inventory?
There are a number of possibilities, and I think we will have to decide which one is plausible and which one is not. Yeah. So, you know, I was talking to Bernice the other day on News Desk about some research I did about ballistics and shell casings. You see, when you fire a gun, the bullet, the tip of it is the part that hits the person. The longest and the biggest part of the bullet is actually filled with gunpowder. That's the shell casing. So when you fire the gun, it ignites, and it's the gunpowder that pushes that tip out to hit the target. So the big shell that contains the gunpowder just falls to the ground. So shell casings will fall where the person who fired was standing. The shell casings do not travel with the bullet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wherever shell casings were found, that's where the person was standing when they fired. So if they haven't found shell casings in the house and they found them outside the house, the conclusion is that all of those bullets were fired outside the house.
And mind you, Kojo, we understand the ballistics also can establish which specific gun fired what.
Exactly.
So in the event of
bullets
the books,
are different.
In the event of the logbook you are talking about, if the logbook still suggests a 6, the ballistics could say otherwise, depending on what conclusion they arrive at.
So this is where we come to plausible and implausible explanations. So let's assume that the people who say that they fired 6 are telling the truth. Where did the remaining 40-something shell casings come from? Was there a gun battle there before or after, which would account for them? Or could it be that somebody gathered all the shell casings from inside the house and came and scattered them outside for the children to pick up right after the shooting. Is that plausible? Or is the only plausible explanation that the firing happened outside, in the places where the shells were picked up, especially if they all match the weapons that were issued on that day?
Yeah.
So you see, the window for anyone who is lying is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And very soon it will be impossible for them to keep up a story that simply doesn't add up.
I think the ballistics report will be very crucial to the work of the commission. And I think they should finish it in time and hand it to the commission.
But in the meantime, there seem to be, we seem to be transitioning in the political space, many related things, because we also know that there's a leaked tape, of course, supposedly now confirmed not to be from the NDC, because according to a statement, they said...
Forgive me, just before we get onto the leaked tape, if you could talk us through who else is appearing.
Yes, so aside from the victim that will be coming, we understand Dr. Kwesienin, a security analyst, also expected to appear. Yes, the commission says if they have enough time, they will also hear from John Buedu as well. And one Nathaniel gentleman, I've forgotten his surname, he is the house attendant for the NDC parliamentary candidate. So he was actually in the house before the whole incident started. You recall the parliamentary candidate had said he wasn't around. So that is information that they'll be getting directly from him.
Interesting. They seem to be covering all their bases, the commission.